I was in the backyard, and I started to hear something going through the bushes out there. And so I just kind of looked over in that direction, and I see this big black silhouette. I'm watching it, and I'm telling myself, it's a dude, it's a man strolling down the tracks, or right up, is walking really close against the bush line. Got to where I couldn't see it anymore, and then I really got scared because I was like, that was no dude, that was no man.
You're listening to the Cryptid Creatures Show with Brian and Todd. If you're enjoying the show or would like to submit an encounter, visit our website at www.cryptidcreatures.net, or you can email us at info@cryptidcreatures.co. Now back to the show. Welcome back to the Cryptid Creatures Show. I am Brian, and with me as always is my co-host Todd. What's up, buddy?
Brian, tonight's guest comes from the state of Washington.
Ah, one of our favorite places to be.
It is, and you know what goes on in Washington.
Bigfoot.
Going to bring Drew on. Drew's had quite a few Bigfoot experiences, encounters where he lives there in Washington. And he lives really close to, I guess, Mount St. Helens area, kind of like center of Seattle. And
ooh, yeah, that's a hot spot right there, right around that area.
So
cool.
Get him on and talk to him and see what's going on. What do you say?
Yeah, I can't wait to hear it. Let's get him.
Hello?
Hey, Drew. Thanks for being here and talking to us tonight. You said you were from the state of Washington. That's where you had your encounters, right?
Yes, every single one was here in Washington.
Well, go ahead and tell us about them. Tell us what you saw.
Well, I mean, I can start with the first one. They've all been within the last 10 years or so, ever since I actually purchased a house here in what is Winlock, Washington. So I'm actually, if you check a map, I am the I-5 South that runs between like Seattle down to Portland. There's an exit that takes you over what's called White Pass, and I'm actually on that same exit. And so that's where I'm actually located at. But all my encounters have happened since I moved to this house. And they actually died out within the last couple of years because they started doing a lot of clear cutting around the area. So we've kind of lost our interaction. But my first encounter, it actually started off with like hearing noises at night. I used to just stay up and sit outside and listen to all the weird noises at night. And I remember one night I heard, a howl that sounded exactly like the Bigfoot howl that you can find online. And that was the very first thing that I had heard that I was like, that really sounds like what they consider a Bigfoot. And it sounded exactly the same. And so after that, I really started sitting out every night and just listening for noises, waiting to see if I'd hear more howls at night. And the first time I actually had a visual, I was sitting outside listening for noises. And there's a house, a couple houses down from where I'm at. They have a pretty good sized field. And I was hearing what sounded like their cattle gates being messed with. It kind of drew my attention looking over that direction. And then I heard another one of the cattle gates get messed with, but it was closer to us. And I was just kind of staring off at the house, more listening than I was looking. And I happened to see this big shell thing come jumping out of the field and ran off across the road. And my very first thought was, that's the weirdest trick of the eye I've ever seen. And I happened to have another person sitting next to me, and they had asked me if I'd seen the shadow. And that's when I was like, oh, did I really see what I just thought I saw? So I had to replay it through my head to kind of, try to remember what I'd just seen. And, it looked like a big man jumping out of my neighbor's field and just hightailing across the road. And so that was my actual very first sighting of a Bigfoot. And that was quite a few years ago. Actually scared me quite a bit for some reason, that when I saw the thing, the idea that they were real, really hit me. And so I developed a bit of a fear at night being outside in the dark. And that went on for about a year, so I was actually really nervous to be outside at night. I would be looking around every corner expecting things to come out that shouldn't be out there. But after about a year, I kind of got over the fear. And we actually had another encounter. Did you want me to just go straight through them? Or,
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Okay, so then I believe the next encounter was actually me and my wife. We were sitting in the living room watching television, and I was laying there actually with my head on her lap, and she kept glancing toward the kitchen, and after a few times I asked her what she was looking at, and she said there was something in the window, and I asked her, what do you mean? She goes, I don't know, it looked like a shadow or something, and she was trying to figure out what she's seeing. I asked her, is there someone in the yard? She goes, I don't know. There was something in the window, though. And so I got up, went out back, started coming near the window that she thought she had seen it through. And as soon as I got up to it, she shouted out, oh, my God, it was big. I actually started looking around the yard trying to figure out what she had seen. And so I was looking around the backyard looking for any indications that something had come through the backyard. And so I search around, and I get up to the side of the house, which be to the south of the house. We used to have some trees out here within 100 feet of the house. And I started hearing something up in the tree. And I kept looking up there, because I kept hearing noises like something's moving around the tree. And I was seeing branches moving around. And I told my wife, I said, there's something in the tree. And so I was trying to get the courage up to get close enough to it. Because, I could hear something clearly moving around in our tree. We had come back in the house real quick to get a flashlight. And went back outside, and I couldn't get brave enough to get up to the tree. But you could definitely tell something good size was up moving around in the tree. But I was too afraid to get up too close to it, so we actually came back in the house, and we'd head upstairs, pretty much to go to bed for the night. Well, I decided to open up the upstairs window, and I was kind of goofing around, and I was out listening to see if that thing was still in the tree, and I started whistling, making little weird noises, and then I get this quick whiff of I call it like a skunk smell. I mean, they smell pretty close to a skunk. But I got this quick little whiff, and then I hear this loud impact noise. Like something very heavy had just landed on the ground. And so I decided, okay, I'm done. I'm done messing with you. Because whatever that was, it was big. And so I closed the window, and we went to bed for the night. And so that encounter, about a month later, I had gone down to the hardware store and bought some 12-inch spikes because I was trying to figure out how I could get up in that tree. So I wanted to look for any proof that something was up in my tree. And I was walking out to the tree, and I happened to be glancing at the ground. I mean, for no specific reason. And the way the sun was setting, it actually highlighted up some footprints. And it took me a little bit. I was looking at it because I said, well, it kind of looks like a footprint. When I get down, I started looking at it even closer, and I noticed you could see where the toes had pushed down into the ground. And I was like, well, it definitely looks like a footprint. And so I figured, well, if this is from when the thing was in the tree, there should be more of them. And so I continued slowly walking out to the tree, looking at the ground this time, and I was really, really looking now. And I ended up finding 2 more footprints, and they were heading straight to the same tree. And so I made a good effort to try to get up the tree, but I definitely could not do it. It was very difficult for me to hang on spikes and try to hammer them in and try to get up into the tree. So I never did get up into the tree to look for any samples, but I did have pictures of the footprints, because at the time I had no clue on how to do like a foot casting, but I did have pictures that were on my old cell phone. I wish I would have probably printed those out. They were, say the pictures really didn't do justice. You had to see them in firsthand because you could see where the toes, all 5 toes had pushed into the ground like this thing was running. And so not only could you make out the shape of a foot, but right where the toes would be, there was the indentation even further in the ground, like this thing was running. And so, yeah, it would have been really nice if I would have known how to cast it.
Do you think this thing was climbing up in this tree and looking in your bedroom window at you guys? I hate to say it like that, but do you think it's possible?
Well, no, I think it got startled because she noticed it looking in the window, and I think he just ran. And so I think he was actually just hiding in a tree. And so what I think had happened is when we noticed he was looking in the window, he ran off and ran up into a tree. So I think that's why he was up in the tree.
Did she describe what she saw?
The only thing she told me was that it looked like kind of like a shadow, and that it blocked out the train because there was actually a train coming by. And she said, "Yeah, I couldn't see the train through it." Because she was confused at first. She thought maybe it was a shadow from somebody in the house. She thought, maybe someone was casting a shadow, and that somebody was going to come around the corner and try to scare us or something. And she said, "No, but I couldn't see the train through it." She goes, "There was something out there." And that's when I was like, "Oh, there's someone in the yard." Because she was trying to explain to me. I'm like, "What do you mean you're seeing a shadow?" She goes, "Well, that's what it looked like, but I couldn't see the train through it." And that's why I was like, "Well, there's got to be someone in the yard."
Are you surrounded by a lot of woods, a lot of wilderness?
I used to be. Yeah, I used to have we had quite a bit of woods out here. But like I was saying, in the last couple of years, they've cleared out, I'd probably say a few hundred acres of just trees around this area. I mean, they've been clear-cutting like crazy.
Yeah, I'm looking at the map where you're at there. You are, you're right in the middle of Bigfoot country. I mean, you know that, right?
At the time, I did not.
I mean, how far are you from Mount St. Helens? An hour, maybe?
About an hour and a half or so, yeah. Mm-hmm. Not too far out.
Yeah, if you were going to live around Bigfoot, where you're at is probably exactly where I would choose. To be honest with you, which is cool. I mean...
Yeah. I wish we did.
Maybe it isn't to you, but we're enjoying it so far. But
no, I mean, yeah, I actually come to miss them now. Now that I don't get the activity that I used to, but at the time, I always thought I was going to have to go, out in the deep woods, even ever try to see a Bigfoot. And so I used to always joke with the kids that we'd, maybe one day we'll go, out look for these things. So I never really took them too serious. But I always had that idea that, they're possible. But I always thought, well, we're going to have to go way out there to ever have a chance to see one. I never knew that, all my encounters would be right here, basically at my own home.
Yeah, more and more we're hearing that these Bigfoot creatures are coming up to, restaurants at night, going through dumpsters, becoming more residential areas, going through people's garbage. They're finding ways to sneak in and out and get an easy meal probably, so where they can take advantage. And where you guys are at, they probably do it a lot more, I'm guessing. So there's a lot of cover for them already, definitely. But what else happened to you? What else did you see or experience?
I got quite a few more. So try to remember these in order now. We actually had a somewhat more of a daytime encounter. I didn't get to actually see this one, but my wife, my nephew, and my son got to see one during the day. And this would have been probably the summertime. So we get the, longer daylight hours because it was about 7-ish. So, I mean, it wasn't quite dark yet. The sun was kind of low in the sky, but it's still enough light that we could see just fine. And my wife and I were actually sitting in the backyard. We have a fire pit out there, and we used to sit out there quite a bit. And my nephew had come back there and was asking me about Bigfoot, asking me, what do they look like, and kind of get me to describe it to him. So I told him what they kind of look like, and I was like, well, why are you asking that? He goes, because he said, I just saw this thing chasing a deer in our yard. And it looked like a shadow chasing a deer. I was like, well, what do you mean, Ricky? What do you say? He said, I don't know. And so I had him take me out there, and he was showing me where he's seen it. And since the last encounter, I happened to find footprints, so I was out there actually looking for footprints this time to see, okay, was something really out here? And so my wife, myself, and my nephew, we went out. It was out my own yard. I do have some trees in my yard, and so I'm out there just looking for footprints. They're standing off a little ways from me, and I'm just kind of zoned in, trying to find any indication that he had seen something. And then my wife started calling, trying to get my attention, but I was pretty focused on what I was doing. And so my nephew, yells over at me, and I look up at him, I'm like, what? And they're like, there's something over here. And so I come back over where they were, and they were pointing further down into our yard. And I said, yeah, there was something behind that tree over there. And she said, well, first I thought it was one of the dogs because we had a black dog at the time. And then she's like, no, but the dog's up in the yard. She said, there's something next to that tree. And so I said, okay. I said, well, we'll get the kids and, go out to the train tracks. Because we have a set of tracks that run right behind our house. And then it used to be even more woods and there's houses. And so I was like, okay, well, I go in after this thing. I have one side that has a road, and I have another side that has tracks, and then woods. I have a feeling it's going to go out to the tracks. And so I told her, well, we'll grab the kids real quick and, go out in the tracks and see if you see anything. And so I gave her a few minutes to grab up the kids, and my nephew and I decided to continue heading off into the woods. And so I'm out there trying to, because I want to see this thing. And I figured, well, it's still daylight, that'd be amazing to be able to see it during the day. And so I'm trekking through the woods there, trying to figure out where this thing's going. I get kind of out to the end of the property, and I actually started to get a little nervous. Because I'm like, well, what am I doing? Here's this supposedly a Bigfoot out here, and here I am just kind of trampling after it. So I hadn't seen anything yet. So I cut out to the train tracks, and I actually come out. My wife and my kids are sitting there, and I guess I scared my wife pretty good. And so I asked her, I said, you guys see anything? And she looks at our son, and she goes, Sean, did you see anything? He goes, yeah, he said, something came out. And then I jumped back in. And I was like, well, what did you see? He goes, it looked like a bear man. It was big and black. He said, jumped out of the trees, looked over at them, noticed they were there, and then jumped back into the trees. And they were showing me where it came out at. So I'm like, okay, let's go see if I can, get a glimpse of this thing. And we head down there. I'm looking around some more. I can hear movement in the trees. And so I'm trying to get just enough so I can see these little guys. And so I hear it moving off one direction, so we circled back around. And we basically played this little cat and mouse thing. It never did let me see it. But we were getting rocks thrown at us while I was trying to get a visual of this thing. And as it actually started to get really dark, I probably had just kind of gave up because I was like, it's not going to let me see it. I know there's something out here. I can hear it moving around, but it's just, it's not going to let me see it. So we head back up to the house, and we were sitting in the backyard, and we were talking more about what they had seen. And so we were sitting there talking about it, and I decided, well, we got a tree here. I've seen, the videos and shows where they go and they knock on the trees. And so I decided to go over there and take an axe handle and kind of knock on the tree that's right here behind my house. I'd say within 15 seconds, we had a knock and return right out in the same area that we had just been. And so it definitely responded. And it also had another rock was thrown at the table while I was walking over to the tree. But that was it kind of died down after that for the night. But for the longest time, that was actually one of my favorite encounters because it actually went on for quite a while. And, we were at it for, I'd probably say, a good hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, me trying to see the thing.
Yeah, to have that long of interaction with one, whether you see it or not, it's kind of cool, I guess, as long as it's not bad interaction, necessarily.
Well, it was mainly throwing at my nephew. And over time, I come to find out that they really like messing with my nephew.
Well, that's good. At least that's not you so much.
Oh, no, it was normally my nephew. And the directions the rocks were coming from the opposite direction that I was hearing the movement. And so I think there was another one out on the other side of the tracks throwing the rocks at us, trying to, I guess, get our attention, while the other one was one I could hear, and I was actually following around.
Yeah, probably. There's always more than one, they say. That, they don't think they travel alone. So you're probably right.
Every few months, we'd had something happen. We had set up a chicken coop and a little duck coop in the backyard. And me and my nephew, same nephew, we were out there actually working on the duck pen. I was trying to get a little pond put in for him. And during this period of time, we used to hear these really weird whistles. And it was just, like this little whistle, and it's almost like whoever was doing it could, like, throw their voice. Like, they'd make it sound like it was coming from a direction, and, it'd either be nobody there, or else, you'd think it'd be my nephew or me whistling at each other. And so we'd be out there, and we both kept looking like, what are you whistling for? Like, that wasn't me. But, I mean, we had these weird little whistles that kept going on. So we were out there working on this duck pen. And my nephew had gone out of it, and he was actually over there wiping getting the mud off his shoes. And I was continuing to finish something up. And my nephew kept yelling over at me, Uncle Drew, why are you throwing stuff at me? I'm like, I'm not throwing things at you, Ricky. So after he said it a couple times, I was like, Ricky, I'm not throwing things at you. I'm over here doing this. I'm not throwing nothing at you. So I started to hear something moving around on the train tracks. I could hear gravel, like the weight being shifted around on gravel. And so I slowly walked over, and I told him, I said, there's something out, on the train tracks. I can hear it moving around. So we're out there quietly listening. And then I guess the train decided to come. So you could hear the cross arms over by this crossroad kick on. And you hear a train whistle. And then something big came jumping right into the bushes right in front of us. And at that point, I was like, I'm done. I said, I don't know what that is. I said, but it's dinner time. Let's get in the house. And so whatever was over there had dove into those trees and made quite a bit of noise. And so we just kind of hightailed it in the house. So I didn't see nothing that time, but it was, it's still pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting. It makes me wonder if they don't use the train tracks to travel up and down, and then they can duck in and out of those bushes and spy on people and homes and whatnot. If that's how that's set up, where you said there's trees and bushes and then the train tracks on the other side, if they got that kind of cover, they could probably do that all day long.
I would have to say I agree with you, because a lot of my encounters, they've been on the tracks, and that's the thought I was getting to, is that they can, it's an easy pathway to travel for them, is just to use the train tracks to walk right down. But yeah, I mean, many of our interactions, the thing is, it was out on the tracks with this wall in between us, so a lot of times you can't see them. But we'll have rocks being thrown up over the trees or the bushes at us, and you try to run out there real quick, like, going, who the heck's throwing rocks at us? And you never see nothing. I was out there one night, and this would have been, I know it was around Thanksgiving. I just don't remember which year. And I work from home. I do wood burning. I'm a wood burn artist. And at the time, I used to actually work pretty late in the night, because I would spend time with my daughter during the day and then try to work at night. And I was getting ready to go to bed, and I'd actually gone out to have my last cigarette for the night. And I was in the backyard, and I started to hear something going through the bushes out there. And originally, I was thinking, rabbits, because we got wild rabbits that move around out here, and you hear them. And so I just kind of looked over in that direction. And I see this, well, I mean, at the time, I was trying to tell myself it was a man, but I see this big black silhouette, human-shaped, kind of walking down the tracks, and I'm watching it, and I'm telling myself, it's a dude, it's a man, and it's just not slowly, it's strolling down the tracks, right up right next to the tracks. It was actually closer to the bushes for some reason than actually out in the tracks, because I kept hearing it hit the bushes. So it was walking really close against the bush line. And even though it looked as though it was walking slow, it was moving pretty fast. And I watched it walk down until it got to where I couldn't see it anymore. And then I really got scared because I was like, that was no dude. That was no man. And so the next day, when I got up, I actually had my wife and my son go out onto the tracks and try to get like a size comparison to this thing. And this thing, I could see his head, his shoulders, almost all the way down to his waist, up above the bushes. And my son, who's, I think he's like 6'1", 6'2", maybe, I could barely see his head. I mean, he had to stick his arm up in the air. I was like, no, this is much taller than that. And so I told her, like, this was no man. I was like, that was not a man. And that was actually one of the clearest, I guess, the clearest sightings that I've had personally, because I could make it out that it was somebody. It was, I could see the head. It almost looked like something with maybe like a blanket draped over him, because you couldn't make out a neck. I mean, it looked like they had something. There was something draped over him, maybe hair. I mean, I couldn't make out hair, but I couldn't see a neckline, but I could see the broad shoulders, and I could see the shape that it was, humanish. But it definitely looked like they had something on them. So we have a crossroads, I don't know, I think maybe 100 yards or a little further south of here. And it's called Avery Road. And it's the one that heads over to the freeway from here. And it goes across the tracks. And there's actually a tree farm out there off on the right, just past the tracks. Man, we actually used to go out at night and walk around this tree farm to see if we could get things to happen. And I had taken my brother and his family, and I believe I had all my kids with me too that night. And we were out walking this tree farm. And so we basically just go up and down the pathways and just kind of wait to see if anything happens. And we've been walking for maybe at least 30 minutes or more, just up and down the roads. And we stopped to take a break. And I was standing to one side of the path, and I was looking into the next row over, because on the tree farms, they're basically, these trees are just in these straight rows. So it's almost like a garden where you got these rows of trees. And so I'm in one row, and I'm looking over into the next row. And I start to see these two glowing, they look like lights at first. And I was staring at them, trying to figure out what I was looking at. And at first I was thinking, maybe they had some water lines out here, and they had some kind of like pipe heaters. But I was like, no, they don't have any water lines out here, because we've been out here numerous times. And I'm staring at these things, trying to figure out what am I looking at. Well, then they decided to blink on me. And so they blinked really slow. And as it started to open its eye again, this thing just took off. And when I realized they were staring at eyes, I kind of jumped back and yelled at, oh my gosh, did you guys just see that? And I'm patting around trying to find my flashlight. My brother's standing right next to me, and he says, yeah, I saw that. I was like, you saw those eyes? And he said, no, something just took off. I was like, the eyes, they were glowing. So it wasn't like reflecting. There was nobody had a flashlight on. The moon wasn't out. It was really cloudy, so there was just no light to reflect. And these things were just glowing. And they were probably less than 10 feet in front of me. And I about had a heart attack when I realized what they were. Now, I can't say for sure if these eyes were attached to a Bigfoot, because I didn't actually see what they were attached to. I just saw the eyes. But, I mean, I hope that they are, because, I got a little nervous about the other things that could be out there. But that would definitely happen to me. Like I said, I try to tell myself it was a Bigfoot, because the other things, those other things kind of make me more nervous about them being around. But, I mean, I do have a couple of encounters that'll, I think, would be other than Bigfoot being around here. But I'm going to stick with the Bigfoots right now. So over the period of time, I had my wife do calls one night, and we ended up bringing in like a 9-foot tall, I'm assuming male, but I don't know, because I didn't close enough to it. But we were out on the side of the house, and I had my wife out trying to make Bigfoot noises because I can't get the high-pitched whooping noise out of my throat. It just doesn't happen. And we were out there with her, myself, and my oldest son. And after she had made the noises, we were just out chit-chatting, waiting to see if we could get a response or anything. And I would probably say about 20, maybe 30 minutes later, I started getting this weird tingling running up the spine of my back. And I started getting this feeling like I needed to look out toward the trees. And so I had one of those kind of like spotlight things you can get where it comes with a big square battery. And so they're pretty bright light. And I turned and I shined it out toward the tree line that's in our yard. And I see what I describe as it looked like a large man in a ghillie suit kind of walking behind this tree. And I'm watching this thing, and then I start to see it leaning out from the other side. And so I'm taking this flashlight and I'm trying to move it around to see if it's just the flashlight causing the shadow, because I want to make sure that, I'm not just making this happen, because I never try to assume that it is Bigfoot every time. But so I was trying to see if, maybe the movement of the flashlight is creating this. And I'm moving it, and I couldn't recreate it, and this thing's kind of doing it on random. It would lean out, look at us, and then lean back. And I hadn't said anything yet, and my son, he asked me, "Do you see that thing?" And I asked him, "See what?" And he goes, "That thing by that tree. Something keeps leaning out, looking at us." I was like, "Oh, you're seeing that too?" He goes, "Yeah." He says, "It's leaning out, and it goes right back in." And so I was still trying to make sure that I'm not recreating this with a flashlight. But we're watching this thing just kind of lean out behind a tree and then go back behind the tree. Well, after a few minutes, my wife starts to get a little nervous, and so she wanted to head into the house. So they turn to walk away. I start to turn, but I'm keeping the flashlight in that direction, watching. And as we're walking away, I can see it decide to come out from behind the tree and basically start to leave. And so I got to see him walk off, and it looked like a really big man in a ghillie suit. And the next day, we went out again. I used my son as kind of like a height gauge because he's a little taller than I am. And we went out to this tree, and right next to the tree, there's actually a stump, a leftover stump from when we had a fallen tree there. And he had to get up onto this tree stump, and he still wasn't quite as tall as this thing was. So what I had started to consider was that women or females have an easier time getting male Sasquatches to come in. And so I used to convince my wife to make these calls for me, or I'd actually get my daughters to come out for walks with me. We had another encounter when it was me, my daughters, and my sons, and we had gone out and walked out to the tree farm like usual, but nothing was going on out there, so we decided to cut out over the tracks and straight out to the road, which actually brought us out past this crossroad here. And so we were not quite a quarter mile, but we were quite a bit down the road, and we started coming back to the house. I was actually focused looking way down the road because you could see the stoplight from the town that's a couple miles north of us. I was watching this light flash, and all of a sudden I see movement off on the right, and so I turn my head to look, and I see this thing jumping in the air, and it jumped off from the side of the road off into the tree line, and it happened to be jumping in front of one of the street signs that tells you that the freeway, access is the next road. So I'm watching this silhouette kind of flying in front of this sign. And so I get a visual of a bare foot and this really hairy leg and then a massive body. Just kind of, you know, it was already midair. They just went straight into the bushes, made no noise at all. And my dog looked at me and she was like, "Did you see that?" And of course I did see it. And I just was like, "Just keep going." I was like, "Just keep going. Let's go. Let's get home. Let's get out of here," because I was too close. And so we're keep on heading to the house. And she's telling me that, yeah, there was something sitting on the side of the road. And she thought it was a dog until it jumped. And I said, "Yeah, I seen it when it jumped." And so we're talking about this, and we telling the other kids who didn't see nothing. We were telling them, and we get a little closer to the house, and we start hearing this weird metal creaking noise. And I was thinking, well, maybe our neighbor has a gate that I didn't know about, because it almost sounded like how a cattle gate in the wind can kind of move. It's just got this weird, metal noise. But so we stopped, and we're kind of looking around, trying to figure out where this noise is coming from. And we couldn't figure out where it came from, so we finished going home, and we're talking about this thing. And we actually my daughter got hit by a rock that night, but that was about it for the night. So the next day, we decided, okay, let's go for another walk. And we started walking down the road, and right out here, not directly in front of the house, but pretty close, there's a street sign letting you know that the crossroads coming up. And we noticed the sign looked a little bent. And so we stopped and we're looking at it, and we're like, well, that's kind of weird. I don't remember that sign being bent. And the kids ran over to it, and they went over to check it out, and they decided to push on it. And as soon as they pushed on it, they made the creaking noise. And and so we all stopped, and we're like, that was that noise last night. And so I came across the road to look at the sign, and I'm looking down along the shoulder, and I'm like, well, there's no indication that a car hit this sign, and it's right in front of the house. We would have known if a car had an accident here. And so we're looking at the street sign, and it's got a pretty good bend to it. And so the only thing we could figure is that the thing that had jumped off the side of the road was following us and had bent the street sign. And so I actually used to show lots of people the street sign, because I tell them, yeah, Bigfoot bent the street sign. And I think about a year ago, they finally replaced it. But, yeah, for the longest time, we had this bent street sign right in front of the house that we couldn't budge at all. I mean, we tried to push it back, but we couldn't move it at all or get it to bend at all.
Did you get a picture of it?
I do have a picture of it somewhere.
Okay.
Probably on my old cell phone, because that's when I used to take pictures. So I did have a picture of it. I had friends come over that I showed it to them, but I don't know that I'd be able to find it.
Well, if you can find it, go ahead and send it to us, and we'll post it when we air this episode.
Okay, yeah. I can definitely see if I can find it. I just don't. It might be on my old cell phone, but I can take a look.
No worries.
Because if I can find that means I can find the footprints too.
Oh, that'd be cool if you could do that, yeah. Did you say these instances happened over a 10-year period? Or they started 10 years ago?
Well, since I've only been living here for about 10 or 11 years. So this is all the things that have happened have been in the last, since I've been here.
Are they still going on? I mean, you still having interactions?
Very rarely. I mean, like I was saying, ever since they started cutting all these woods, our interactions have pretty much died out. But I still have more. I have more to tell you.
Okay.
I'm getting out of order. Definitely out of order. But back when we used to have things happen, like every few months, we actually used to have people come over, and I try to get them encounters. So I'd have family members and people that we met online come out to the house, and we walk around at night and try to get something to happen. And we had actually had a couple come out, and we took them over to the tree farm. And there's a corner of the tree farm that used to actually be the really creepiest part of the tree farm. It just always had a weird vibe to it. And, well, there's actually another account. I'll tell you in a second on that one, too. But, so we had this couple out there. I didn't actually end up seeing anything, but the wife of the couple thought she'd seen something in the trees there. And so later on that night, I had actually took them down to where we had the daytime sighting. And so we were down there talking about the encounter. And that night, I believe we had them there, and I actually had a family friend there, because we had quite a few people down there with me. And we were kind of made in the circle, and we're just talking about, the different encounters that happened. And out of the blue, I hear like a rock kind of land behind the husband of this couple. And I looked over at him, and he's just standing there, and I looked over at one of my kids, who's kind of a prankster. And I asked her, did you just throw that rock? And the gentleman was like, she didn't move. And he was standing there stiff as a board. And so I thought, I must have scared him pretty good, because it landed right behind him. Well, later on, after they had left, I come to find out, I guess he actually got hit by the rock. I didn't hear it hit him. I just hear him hit the ground. And so we ended up, I guess, convincing them, because they had seen something in the tree farm and then getting hit by the rock that night. And so they actually got kind of into Bigfoot. We had a gentleman that was a Bigfoot researcher came out, and he was out exploring the trees that we had across the train tracks. And so he was out there for a while, and then when we got done, we were out by the fire pit, and we were actually just talking about encounters. Well, he went and left that night. So later on that night, again, I was wood burning late at the time. I go outside, getting ready to go to bed, and I'm standing in the backyard, and I start hearing this rock banging coming from the train tracks. And so there's something out there just banging these two rocks together really loud. And I start getting kind of freaked out, because I'm like, something's hitting those rocks really loud. And I ran back in the house real quick to get my wife. And I had actually left the back door open. And I ran in, got her, and we were coming to the back door, and you couldn't hear nothing until we stepped back outside the door. As soon as we stepped back outside the door, these two, started right back up. But this time it actually moved, so it was more directly in line sight with us. And it was just sitting there just banging these rocks together. And so it actually creeped me out pretty bad, because that was the first time I've had where, clearly they were trying to communicate something to us. And I was like, I can't see nothing. I'm getting really, really pretty nervous here. But we ended up going to bed. The next day, the gentleman had messaged me and asked me if anything weird happened the night before. And I said, yeah, what'd you do? He said, I didn't do anything. He said, well, I found a bunch of, bent over branches and snapped branches. He said there was a lot of indication that something was out there. And so I told him what had happened. And I said, yeah, I don't think they appreciated you being out in their area. And they were out banging rocks at us that night. We also had a couple of encounters. Well, this was actually 2 nights in a row. And this was, I'm thinking about, this one I know was about 2 or 3 years ago, because it was when I decided to paint the house. And I had borrowed some scaffolding from a friend. And I had it sitting off on the south side of the house, because we have a 2-story house, and I can't reach the upper level with a ladder. And so I had the scaffolding on that side of the house. And I wood burned, at the time I used to wood burn out in our garage. And I was out there working. Everyone else had gone to bed, so I was pretty much the only one up in the house. And I hear this loud, noise off on one of the cars that I had sitting off on that side of the house. And I went outside to see what the heck that was. And I go out and I look around. I didn't see nothing. So I was thinking, well, maybe one of the cats had, jumped off and landed on the car or something like that. I didn't really think much about it. Well, the next night, I'm out there wood burning again, and I start to hear creaking above me in the roof. And so I kind of glanced up, and I thought, oh, someone's in the upstairs bathroom. And I'm wood burning, and then it dawned on me, I was like, wait a minute, the bathroom's not above me. I'm out in the garage. There's nothing above me. And I'm staring at the ceiling, and I could hear this creaking going across the roof. And it gets off to the far end of the house, and then I hear the loud banging on the car again. And again, I'm thinking, some kind of animal or cat. And my wife, because we had our bedroom out in the garage, I had built an extra room out there. She came out and was like, there's something outside. And she started to go to the back door. That's when it dawned on me. I was like, wait a minute, how am I hearing creaking through the roof if it was a cat. I said, there's something. I was like, don't go outside. And she's like, what? Because I was like, because whatever was up there has to be pretty big. I was like, I could hear it creaking the roof. And it was, good 4 or 5 feet in between each creak, like as if it was stepping, and I could see there was a gap. So I was watching, I was listening it through the ceiling, and I'm staring up at the ceiling, watching where the noise is coming from. And she had gotten as far as opening the door, and she said, yeah, there's a weird smell out here. And I was like, don't go out there. I said, there was something on the roof. Well, the next day, my kids actually came and was talking to us, and my daughter said that, yeah, around, I think it was like 3 a.m., she said that her dog started barking out the window, to the upstairs window. And she said, yeah, she thinks there was something outside on the roof. And my son, who's actually on the other side of the house, he said that, yeah, he heard something, because he had his window slightly open. And he said, yeah, he heard something walking around up there, and then he heard it jump off the roof. And so the next day I said, well, I need the scaffolding away from the house, because whatever's getting up on the roof, I don't want them up on the roof anymore.
Yeah, don't blame me. I would have definitely done the same thing. You think one was walking around up there?
Yeah, no kidding.
I think it was. I mean, it was, because I went up there, and I had, I think one of my kids sit in the garage, and I was walking across the roof. And I don't know if I had them record it or if I just had them listen to what it sounded like with my weight on the roof. Because when I was in there, just the fact that I could hear it, because I actually had an enclosed attic area in the garage. I had drywalled it. It was all, sealed up. And so for me to be able to hear the creaking of the roof, I'm like, this thing had to be pretty good. That's some pretty good weight to it. So that's kind of what I figured was up on my roof.
Yeah, probably. We probably got time for one more story if you want to tell one. I don't know where you're at.
Well, I have a bunch of little ones, but I'll tell you the one real fast. The one that I actually don't know for sure is even a Bigfoot.
Okay.
This was kind of like the marking of the last time we really had an encounter that I know for sure was a Bigfoot. And this happened right after my stepfather had passed away. So this was around, about almost 3 years now. And it was actually the day of his funeral. And we had gotten back from the funeral, and my brother and his family were here. And I decided, well, I got this elderly neighbor down the corner. I wanted him to meet my brother. And so me and my brother walked down there, and I introduced the neighbor, and, we kind of chit-chatted for a while, and then came back. When we got up to the house, my wife, my mother, and my sister-in-law, they were all talking about this dog thing they had seen in the field. And, they were all describing it. I was like, a dog? They were like, yeah, it was this big black dog-looking thing. And I'm thinking, are you sure it wasn't a Bigfoot? Because we see a lot of those around here. They're like, no, it looked like a dog. And so I thought, okay, well, here we go. We're going to have another encounter tonight. So I was going to get the family together and take them out for a walk that night. And so we had actually set off later on that night with me, my brother, a bunch of the kids. And we had headed off to the north side of the yard through the trees up there. We ended up actually finding a porcupine that night, which kind of got us distracted. We ended up bringing it home. And the kids stayed there. So it ended up just being me and my brother going back out again. And we headed off toward the tree farm area. And so we were over there, and I didn't get into the part about the wisp, but there's indications when there's things around. There's these little weird lights you can see. But we were out there talking. And at first I was thinking, okay, well, I think we missed the opportunity to see the Sasquatch tonight. But we were talking, and they started seeing these indications. And I said, well, I think it's still around. And so we started circling around to head into the tree farm. And the closer we got to the tree farm, I started getting this really weird feeling. I started getting the same kind of tingles that I did the night that my wife had called the big melon, where it started to spread throughout my entire body. And it got to a point where I just had this really bad sense of fear. And it finally got where I told my brother, I said, I don't usually do this. I was like, but whatever's out there, I don't want to see it. I said, I don't think it's a Bigfoot. I said, the feeling I'm getting, I'm scared as heck. I said, I'm going back home. And so we ended up heading back home. and I was talking to my wife about it. And when we first had gotten back, I felt okay, and I started getting the feeling again. And something that does happen a lot of times is the things would follow you home, especially with how close we are to it. So I started getting that same feeling again, so we ended up going to the house. That feeling, I mean, it's really hard to describe, but it affected me enough that at the time I refused to go out at night for a good 6 months. I would not go out at night. I wouldn't go out walking. I wouldn't do any of that. I was like, no, because I kept feeling that feeling. And I don't think it was a Bigfoot. I think it was something else. And I had actually talked to a gentleman who does a dog band show, and I asked him about, that feeling. I asked him about, looking like a dog, and I had asked him if people describe this for dog band encounters. And the fact that the Bigfoot encounters had kind of died off. I said, yeah, this is all kind of happened at the same time. And he said, yeah, he's been told that by different people who have had encounters with dogman. And so, for a while, I refused to go out at night. I mean, there's been a couple weird things since then, but this was kind of the same time where they started cutting all the trees down. And so a lot of our activity in the last couple of years has just died.
It's a shame that they cut those trees down. That's obviously what...
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
They don't have any cover or anything to hide in, so they're not going to come out in the open, obviously.
It's an area that, a lot of certain people, groups of people get upset if you talk about this whole logging. Where I look at it as like, you guys kind of took all the Bigfoots away from me. You're cutting out all these trees. Everywhere I look now, it's just dead. It's ugly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pretty much.
It's like, whether you guys make money off the trees, it's irrelevant to me. You're destroying the environment.
You're lucky in the fact, though, where you're at. You could drive half an hour or less probably and be in the middle of nowhere and maybe still see one, though, aren't you?
Yeah, do you still try to get out there?
I am. I can, maybe about an hour.
We want to thank you for coming on and telling all those exciting and cool experiences and encounters you had, man. Those were really cool.
Yeah, they were cool, too. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me on.
All right, Drew, you
Sounds
take care. We'll talk to you again soon.
Drew. Yep, take it easy, man.
You too. Bye.
That makes so much sense with the logging, taking down the trees in his area, then they stop showing up.
Yep, the way they're clear-cutting everything out of there. Yep.
It's like they know once that starts.
Then they have to make a whole new path. Yeah,
they got to find something else in some area. But looking at it on the map, like we were saying, it's just so thick anywhere around that area, and that's why they log out there. There's an abundance of trees there and wilderness. But yeah, they start that logging stuff. Bigfoot's not going to stick around for that. He ain't having none of that.
No, all that noise and chopping down trees and stuff.
No. I love having the Pacific Northwest encounters.
Oh, yeah, me too. Those are the most fun. Those are a lot of fun.
Want to thank the listeners as always. Guys, if you're enjoying the shows and want to get extra episodes, you can go to our website, www.cryptidcreatures.net, and you can become a member and get some extra content and a lot of extra episodes popping up there.
That's some really cool merch.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, we appreciate all of you.
Brian, I appreciate you, and thank you for being here with me and my friend.
Same here, brother. Always fun.
All right, with that, we'll get out of here then.
Yep. See ya.